Good afternoon, and today I'm going to be presenting over the Christian view of eudaimonia, which is, as the ancient Greeks would call it, what happiness and the meaning of life is. So we're going to be looking into that. So what I'm going to talk about today during this presentation is the key aspects of Pennington's argument of the Christian view and what happiness and meaningfulness is. And then I'm also going to look at two other views, one ancient view and one modern view, and compare and contrast them with the Christian view of happiness and meaningfulness. And then lastly, I'm going to look at my argument and which view I think is the best for happiness and meaningfulness. So to start off, we're going to go ahead and talk about the Christian view of happiness and meaningfulness, which is going to be based off of the book from Pennington, Jesus the Great Philosopher. So a key idea for this is Christianity and the Bible. So to start off, I'm going to use this quote by Pennington. It says, Christianity is a philosophy of happiness because it is based on the Bible, and the Bible is constantly addressing the questions of how to live with meaning and how to be happy. Okay, so basically, in the Bible, it addresses all these kind of questions of, what does it look like to live with meaning? What does it look like to be happy, and how can we apply that to our lives? So that's why Christianity is a philosophy based off of that, because the Bible is a key foundation of Christianity. All right. So because the Bible is stressing those questions, we can apply those to the Christian view. Okay. Secondly, the Beatitudes, which is in the Bible as well. It's from Matthew chapter 5, I believe. And the main message here, Jesus is teaching a crowd, and he gives the Beatitudes, and pretty much the main message of the Beatitudes is how do we live happy, how do we live with meaning in this world, right? How do we pursue the good life of happiness, okay? And he's saying that, like, now on earth, how do we do that, and then also for the future, right? So another quote that I really like from a different source is from Tim Tebow's book called Mission Possible, and it says, and when you live for Jesus and you love people, you're going to have a life of eternal significance, no matter how insignificant your life looks on the outside. So basically what he's saying here is, if you have this Christian view and you live for Jesus and you love other people and you follow the teachings of Jesus, right, no matter how your life looks on the outside to people of this world, you're going to have significance eternally, right, which is in heaven with God the Father, which is that greater view of Christianity, and it's really being drawn together there. Okay, another idea from Pennington's book is that God is fully happy, right? We know that God created us in His image as well. So since we are created in His image, we as humans also strive to be fully happy, okay? And that's how we can, pursue God and pursue Jesus, right? By doing that, we're becoming more like Him, and then therefore we have more meaning and we're more happy in our lives. Okay, so the idea of suffering is also a big part of the lives of Christians. And it's very clear in the Bible that if you're going to be Christian, you're going to have suffering at times, you're going to go through trials. So an idea from Pennington here in his book is that Jesus and His followers, they don't deny the reality of suffering, okay? But even though they do suffer and face hard things, having meaning and a flourishing life in this world is possible while being broke and with unjust suffering, right? And we see, like, Jesus goes and dies on the cross for us, we also face trials, but because we go through those hard things, because we have that eternal perspective of Jesus Christ, and that we live for more, we can still pursue meaning and happiness even though we go through hard things. And then a quote from the Bible that I really like, it comes from Jesus' teaching. So Jesus is talking when he's saying this. It comes from John chapter 14, verse 6. And Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And this really illustrates the idea that the Christian view of happiness and meaningfulness is found through Jesus Christ. True happiness is discovered in the way and life of Jesus, right? And when we pursue that as Christians, we're pursuing happiness and meaning. Okay, so now I'm going to compare and contrast a little bit of that Christian view that we just talked about with the ancient view of Stoicism. And Stoicism is one of the most popular and oldest Hellenistic philosophies back from the ancient times. And it encourages a cognitive view of emotions, so a lot different than Christianity there. And then a modern view that I'll be looking at as well as Stoicism is nihilism, which is more of a secular non-faith-based view, and it's the idea that like nothing really matters of what we do. Okay. So to start off with Stoicism, the main problem that Stoicism has with religion is the extreme emphasis that it puts on emotions and passion. And they say that this stems from the belief in a god or many gods, depending on what religion it is. And Stoics are very suspicious of emotions because they believe that the true key to happiness was complete self-sufficiency, and that depends on no one else and no circumstances. So you can tell from this that Stoics really focus on like what you can do for yourself, right? They don't really want help from other people. They don't depend on anything else, and they want to be self-sufficient, right? And this is very different than Christianity, the Christian view, because obviously as Christians, we rely on God, we rely on others in the church, in the community, right? We're not just going about life ourselves and trying to be self-sufficient. We want to lean into what others have for us, okay? So that's one way that it's different. Another way that's different is Stoicism doesn't really have a belief in anything greater than oneself, right? They're very self-focused, as you can see here. They only rely on themselves. So as Christians, we believe in God, we believe in something greater, an eternal perspective, whereas Stoicism doesn't really have that. Another thing that goes along with Stoicism is they believe that managing emotions is very important. If you give in to your emotions, you're opening yourself up to negative desires, which can be true, but Christians would argue that God and Jesus had emotions, right? Jesus wept at times on earth, like he mourned for Lazarus' death, for example. Emotions aren't a bad thing, as Christians would argue. Even God and Jesus have them. So I would say that emotions are fine with the Christian view, as with Stoicism they are not. And then for nihilism, so nihilism is more of a scientific understanding of the world. It's a very modern and secular view. It's often more of a felt experience. Most people aren't like committed nihilists or don't believe in it totally, but it's more of a view that's like felt by people at times in their life. They struggle to find a comprehensive worldview that makes life meaningful. That's coming from Pennington once again. So basically they have the idea that nothing in life matters. Like our good works, our sins, whatever we do doesn't really matter. Okay, and Christians would argue against that, right? That's a big difference. Because Christians believe, what we do in this life, how we treat others, how we pursue our relationship with Christ, that stuff matters and it's important. But nihilists say, like, okay, that stuff doesn't matter at all, right? And if you have that idea, you have that view on life, that's going to be hard to like make life meaningful at all. If you think nothing matters, like you can't be happy with that idea. It's hard to find meaning in life if nothing you do has any purpose, right? So that's one of the big differences there is Christianity. You get much more purpose in your life, whereas nihilism, it's kind of just, nothing really matters at all. Okay, so looking at my argument now, I'm going to be arguing for the Christian view of happiness and meaningfulness and why I think it's the best view out of the ones we've talked about. So kind of just jumping into the argument here, I think that living for something greater than yourself gives you greater meaning, okay? Because you're not focused on yourself, you're focused on something bigger. Loving Jesus and loving others makes your life significant and full of meaning. The Bible is constantly addressing how we can be happy and have meaning. And this is very important because the Bible is one of the key foundations of Christianity, right? It helps answer a lot of our questions from that Christian view. And then from this, I can say that the Christian view of happiness and meaningfulness is the best view because people that love and seek Jesus, they love others, and they pursue the teachings of the Bible in relation to what it says about happiness and meaningfulness will find that they are more happy and have more meaning in life because they live for more, right? And Christianity is a philosophy of happiness because we know the Bible addresses those questions, okay? To kind of sum it up, I think that the Christian view is exactly how people should go about pursuing happiness in life, living for something greater than themselves, loving others, loving Jesus Christ. It just represents all what people should do to have meaning in their lives and just be happy in the way that they live. And I think that this view and this argument is better than any of the other views that we've talked about in class and read about because it focuses more on heavenly things and something greater, for the greater good, right? It has more of an eternal perspective, whereas a lot of the other views focus on things of this world, like, whatever accomplishments, fame, money, like all those things are going to pass away eventually, like we're all going to die. So they don't really have as much meaning and purpose, right? If we put all our effort into those things, how far is that going to get us? We'll be happy for a time, and we may feel like we have meaning, but when we talk about something greater, heavenly perspective, eternal perspective, right? Living for the Christian view, we're going to have that happiness and meaning long term, right? Which is what really matters, and why I think this argument and this view is above the other ones, because that meaning is everlasting, right? That happiness will be everlasting in heaven. And these are my references that I used: the Bible, the Great Philosopher book by Pennington, and then the Tim Tebow book, Mission Possible. And thank you for listening.